And you, sir?
I agree with the gentleman who just said that Britain is a very tolerant society. Yes, it is very true. It's a very, very tolerant society. Sadly, the tolerance of this country has been abused by certain religious groups. And I completely agree with Douglas Murray when he said that Mr. Cameron has done the right thing. And I hope Mr. Cameron means business. Now, Mr. Cameron was making this speech in the context of terrorism. And what he was trying to convey a message was how we target terrorism. Unfortunately, this country in the last 15 years has not addressed the root cause of terrorism. The root cause of terrorism is bad teaching in religious schools. And that has to be addressed fundamentally.
It's rubbish.
You're saying rubbish.
It's rubbish. Very briefly, we didn't get into this, but one of my other objections to David Cameron's speech is the idea you want to give us.
So we'll get to Mehdi Hassan's response in just a few seconds. But did you hear what he said? He didn't like that when that gentleman in the audience, he's a British citizen, I'm assuming, obviously ethnic heritage is probably from India or Pakistan or somewhere out in an Asian country, but he's more than likely a British citizen. And he basically agreed with Douglas Murray, white guy, white conservative, right? And Mehdi Hassan was having none of it. Did you hear him? He said rubbish, rubbish. All right. He didn't like the fact that this Asian man, who is a British citizen, was basically saying that, guess what, Mehdi? What you're saying is a crock of crap. And British people, the British government, they are very tolerant, very accepting, but they have basically allowed these other small minority groups who have now abused the niceties, the welcome mat from British society, and have abused it to their gain, and in many instances have allowed these terrorist organizations, these terrorist cells, to do their dark bidding for them. That's what he's talking about. And this needs to be addressed, that these, whatever you want to call them, teachings or that, that are happening at these madrasas, at these Islamist schools from these Muslimists who are not following the true doctrines of the religion of Islam, but are basically, fabricating things, are also taking things tremendously out of context. And that's all he's trying to address, is that the British government is not, this whole multiculturalism has not worked. Let's continue with Mehdi's response.
Give a speech on multiculturalism. You want to give a speech on counter-terrorism? Give a speech on counter-terrorism. Don't pretend they're one and the same thing. Don't offend our intelligence. Terrorism is not a cultural problem. Terrorism is a political problem.
No, and it's a religious problem as well. And it's a religious problem.
In your view, Douglas.
No, in the view of a lot of people, including the people who carry out acts of terror, who say they do it in the name of religion.
They also say they do it because of foreign policy, and you always ignore that bit, don't you, Douglas?
No, I don't.
When they say they do it because of Iraq, you don't notice that bit.
At least listen to the reason they say they do it.
Agreed. So why didn't he talk about foreign policy in his speech on Saturday?
I'm willing to talk about foreign policy, as would David Cameron be. But you cannot keep on pretending that there is no religious component to the terrorism, because there is.
I thought you said it was cultural.
No,
Cultural religion.
Stick with religion. You're saying there is no religious component.
I'm saying there is a religious component. I'm saying it's not a cultural component. The people who blew themselves up on the London Underground were not people who couldn't speak English or didn't go to secular schools.
That's the tragedy of it.
Well, then don't say it's a cultural problem.
No, but you're
don't pretend that forced marriage.
Because maybe you're doing what you're doing, is that you are
Don't speak at once. Nobody can hear. So let's have a little bit of order, shall we? Let's have a question, please, from Gemma Perlin.
Could the introduction of democracy...
So once again, you see Mehdi Hassan do what leftists, progressives, liberals do all the time. That is, try to hide the facts, obscure the obvious, sweep it under the rug, and then basically just throw out the cards, the racist, the bigot, the Islamophobe, trying to get that five of a kind, right? That's what they're trying to do. And basically, when he said multiculturalism, mate, he says religion has nothing to do with multiculturalism. No, it's all about foreign policy. Multiculturalism has nothing to do with culture. It's just policy. And he goes, sit down. He goes, you never talk about the policy when they basically say they're doing these, terrorist activities, these terroristic bombings, and they talk about foreign policy. You never mention it then. Oh, so all these Islamists, all these Muslimists are sitting around in a cave or sitting around a bunker someplace and going, let's see, look at the foreign policy that the British government came up. Oh, you know what? That bill that came up in the House of Commons? Yeah, that one. I don't think we like that one. I think we should do something about it. Let's go ahead and decide what terrorist activity we can do because we don't like that foreign policy. No, there's a component. If public policy was there, okay, it's a small component. It's culture. It's religion. It are these things. It is a lack of integration in society. It is the fact that they want to take over that society. They want to bring about anarchy and chaos so that whatever is in their idiot, stupid, retarded minds of these terrorists, that they can somehow control and bring that society to another caliphate or whatever it is that they're thinking about, that they've been told that this is what the religion or that this is what the dogma is about. That's what's happening. Anyways, let's continue on.
To Egypt have the effect of destabilizing the Middle East and lead to a string of anti-Western extremist Arab states in the region?
The first thing is that to get back to the question, the issue of democracy across the region. Some of us have been arguing for many years that Arab states, Muslim majority countries, have the same desire for democracy as the rest of the world. You used to hear people say about the Eastern Bloc, the Eastern Europeans can't cope with democracy. Lo and behold, they could. You used to hear it said about South America, the same thing. South Americans somehow can't cope with democracy. Lo and behold, they could. And the same thing is becoming clear across the Arab and Muslim world. The Lebanese Druze leader, Walid Jumblat, said that the sight in 2005 of Iraqis going to the polls for the first time would have in time a seismic effect in the region, because people would not see their neighbours going to vote and not want that themselves. Now, this is coming sometime after most of us expected it, but there are obviously problems, and it's naive to walk into this and ignore some of the problems within Egypt.
Do you see Mubarak, as Mehdi Hassan said, as our person, the West's person in Egypt?
No.
Or do you think that we should have...
I think it's equally patronising to the people of Egypt to assume they have had no role in their own country. However, the West has had a very complex and, I think, unfortunate, regrettable situation in recent years of thinking that stability and the pursuit of stability in the region was the most important thing. That has come back to bite us again and again, not least in the rise in anti-Western feeling across the region. There is a problem, though, and it has to be flagged up to go back to the question, which is the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood, if it didn't have Muslim in the name, would be being described at the moment as a fascist political party. It has its roots in fascism. It is an extremist organisation. Its offshoot, the Hamas in the Gaza, when it got into power, immediately killed its opposition, and it hasn't had another election. It was just another one announced, July the 9th this year. There was meant to be another election in the Palestinian areas. The Hamas have said no. They are a one-vote, once political party, and we can't be so naive to think we can't... No. They cannot be so naive as to think that the Brotherhood, if they came to power in Egypt, will be anything other than a disaster for the region.
Well, do we have the right to intervene to prevent it?
No. Let me clarify this. So the following. It is very unwise for leaders like William Hague, David Cameron and Barack Obama to be saying who they would like to run Egypt. It's a choice for the Egyptian people, and they should remain silent. But that does not mean that behind the scenes and elsewhere you cannot say that the government, whatever it is that comes in Egypt, has to abide by, among other things, international norms, peace treaties, including the Treaty of Peace that has kept peace between Egypt and Israel for 3 decades now. And this is a very, very important thing, because if the Brotherhood comes in and says, as their leaders have said in recent days, that they will immediately block the Suez Canal and start a war with Israel, then we are collectively going to be, and the Middle East is going to be in serious trouble.
How can you order a new government to abide by a treaty made by Mubarak?
Well, in the following way,
between Egypt and Israel. When you say you don't want intervention,
made by Sadat.
In the following way, by saying that by using soft power, by encouraging the country to go in a certain way, by making it clear that for Egypt to become a normalised country, it has to have a normal government.
None up there in the check shirt, the blue check shirt. It's somebody with a striped shirt, doesn't matter.
Yeah,
go
I
on
think
then.
the big difference between Eastern Europe and the Middle East is Islam. And some would say that Islam is not compatible with democracy.
Okay.
Tell that to the Indonesians. Yeah, Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world and is a democracy. So.
The woman up there on the left there. Yes.
I find what Douglas Murray is saying objectionable. He's saying in public, oh, the leaders, we mustn't say who should be in power in Egypt, but actually you're advocating behind-the-scenes action and covert action to influence it. And you also seem to me to be saying that the will of the Egyptian people, should they democratically elect the Muslim Brotherhood, who I notice you refer to as the Brotherhood, because it makes them sound more mysterious and dangerous, that actually we should start interfering then and telling Egyptians how they should vote and how their government should behave.
I hope I made it clear that I think that it would be regrettable for the Egyptian people, for the region and the international community if an extremist organisation like the Brotherhood took control of...
Well, leave it to be the last person to be a white, liberal, elitist, and not only that, female as well. Right? And then she comes out and she just basically wants to attack Douglas Murray. That's fine. She has an opinion. But she's saying Douglas Murray saying, oh, behind the scenes thing. That happens all the time with governments. Like you talked about what? Soft diplomacy. Hey, guess what? If this happens and you're there, you better be having policies that are going to be within the norm of nations around you. Otherwise, there will be some severe penalties to pay. And that's stuff that's decided, later on. But if you want to be a part of the world scene, a nation among nations, there are certain, norms that everybody needs to abide to. There's certain laws that everybody needs to follow through with. That always happens. And as far as calling it the Brotherhood to make it sound more mysterious, it's their freaking name, lady. The Brotherhood. And I think that you should call it the Muslim Brotherhood because that connotates exactly what type of brotherhood they are. They're not the Christian Brotherhood. They're not the Jewish Brotherhood. They're not the Hindu Brotherhood, not the Buddhist or the Chinese or the Japanese Brotherhood. No, they're the Muslim Brotherhood. It's amazing how these leftists, these elite social justice warrior virtue signaling people, she's sitting there all up there with their nose and her pinky in the air, looking down upon Douglas Murray and everybody else, and just basically spouting her virtue signaling. So we can say, wow, now that's somebody in British, that's a Britisher who is all about kumbaya and loving everybody. Amazing, folks, amazing. Anyways, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasser Sheikh Show. We hope you've enjoyed our content. If you have, we'd certainly like to earn your subscription. Check out all our other videos, our video links above and below. And I'll leave you with my final thought as always, which is, when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.